Video night. Do what now? Yep, I use that to record. Just our class though. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a map of Wi-Fi access points done by folks who do war driving, and then also just individuals who have an app called PicoNet on their phone. And basically it shows open SSIDs, closed SSIDs, things of that nature. I'll zoom in a little bit. In fact, let me zoom out a little bit to show you. Because this is Rock Valley here. No, it's just Thursday. So we zoom in a little closer here. We'll get over some neighborhoods over in this area. And the reason you see the SSIDs on the roads is because that's where the car was or truck when the app was running. And you can even check possible free net, and these would be basically open Wi-Fi's that folks have open all the time. And what this is going to do is refresh that page. So the reason I want to open up with this, we're talking about Wi-Fi security tonight, and this is a one of the topics we'll talk about is war driving. And war driving we've done here at campus. We'll be doing it again in April on like the first Saturday of April. I'll be publishing that next week, but I'll meet here on a Saturday and use this service actually I've used before that allows you to use a Droid app or desktop or laptop app for Linux or PC or Mac, and put it in your car and you drive around. We quadrant off the city 5 miles from Rock Valley and come back in an hour and put a map together of all the hot spots, SSIDs that were found, where they're open, and we come up with a graph on what were open, what wasn't open, and I'll show you the last one we did, what the outcome was. So what you're looking at here is the first screen is a web password crack we did in the first part of the lab. And this was March 2014, where it found a web key in a few seconds. And notice it says here, after a login was applied, it ran what's called a air snort.
Came back on for a second to flash.
There you go. Air snort. And air snort is a Wi-Fi cracking software. Air Sport Snip. And then it captured every attack will be restarted every 5,000 captures, and then it started the attack, and then boom, found the key, and this was the key, cracked the web key. I think it looked like 38 seconds. About 38 seconds to crack a 8-character web key, and it just showed how easy it was. And most home users, when I say most, probably 80% of home users still use web keys, and probably about 50% of businesses use web keys for their SSID security. And so this lab just showed the importance of having a secure access point. And then I put in here in red, remember to try this only at home with permission of the owner of the router, because this crack, I'm sorry, it took 1 minute and 37 seconds with AirCrack NG. And then it gives some web crack tools for Mac, for Windows. And then when it goes into the air driving results, so great job, all that came out. Result of the war drive was 16% of over 4,000 access points were open during the war drive. We use Aircrack NG, some Droid apps, some Mac apps, iOS apps, and this video I'll show of a real live war drive and guys that do this for a living and train others in IT security, what it's all about. So we'll watch that before we get into the discussion on the chapter.
What happens is, because we are qualified licensed penetration testers and those types of things, we sign agreements that say we won't do that. What we did today is show the survey of how you would survey a wireless network, identify weak encryption. As we said, do not use WEP. We shouldn't be seeing WEP. But as you saw going around Albuquerque, New Mexico here in the end of 2012, almost 2013, and we see WEP everywhere. That's a huge problem, because you can crack WEP in a very short period of time, as we showed you with that test access point that we created and set up in our demonstration. I just left California.
So here you can see it's not the most exciting stuff, but I'm already scanning networks here. I'm picking up quite a lot of networks. Yeah.
You got any WEP, man?
Yeah, I got a couple of WEP networks.
You got some WEP networks?
I'm sure I got quite a few.
Turn around so we can crack our WEP and see if we got it rigged or not.
The red indicates that there's WEP, which is your wide equivalent privacy protocol, which is really a 2 or 3 minute hack to crack that key, which...
It shows why radio engineers have no business developing cryptographic protocols. They don't know a damn thing about it. So when we created wireless security many years ago, everybody was in the meeting except for cryptographers. But even the actual algorithm, which is called RC4, which is for round revest of the R and RSA, that algorithm, he says right in the white paper of the algorithm, do not reuse the keys. And WEP reuses the key on every packet. So they decided, radio engineers, again, radio engineers have no business doing cryptographic protocols. They decided, well, we need to put a random string in there protected. Well, they call that an IV, initialization vector. And that IV is only 24 bits. So because it's only 24 bits, I can go through the entire 24-bit key space in a relatively short period of time by doing what we call injection, injecting these packets and all that type of stuff. And by doing that, I get enough weak initialization vectors, IVs, and I crack the key.
But we got to realize that when people have bought some of these devices, they, have had their access point for ages. It hasn't broken. Nobody's bothered to tell them about WEP. They don't know what WEP is in the first place. So that's why it's weak.
So we don't want to break the law. We might go ahead and crack a WEP key. We won't do anything with it. So all we're going to do is run the process. If it says key found, we're automatically going to shut down. We're not going to show the key. We won't actually show the key. We'll redact the key. We're just actually going through the process to show you just when you war drive, if you have WEP available, you're just asking for people to try to crack your actual access point if it's people from the malicious nature. So if you've got WEP on an access point, change it. It should be WPA, and today WPA2 AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, is what it should be. Don't be running any of this WEP anymore. WEP has been broken for a long time, and I'm shocked that we're seeing this much WEP and seeing it on companies and corporate networks especially.
We also don't want to be sitting on top of the network we're going to be breaking into, so we figure we'll put a nice little antenna on this baby before we boot her up. And
you can find those also to mount outside the car as well, or truck.
Because he's not interested in having any more kids, so we can definitely nuke him. This is just using open source Linux machine. Backtrack is really just a customized version of Ubuntu, which is Linux. And a Backtrack, probably one of the most popular, I would say, pen testing distributions out there. It's preloaded with like 350 plus hacking. And so, it makes our life a lot easier because we don't have to go along and set up and install a whole bunch of stuff first. We are just basically picking up some wireless networks and we cracking some encryption.
Trying to generate enough weak IVs, initialization vectors, that 24-bit IV. We're going to look about 18,000 to see if we get enough to crack the key.
If I had another laptop with me, I could have injected traffic a lot faster. But at the same time, I'm also able to look at the fact that I've got my little mobile phone here as well. and I could actually launch some of the attacks from this little baby too,
We do the same thing.
which exactly generate more traffic does. So
We're trying to get enough of those weak IVs to crack, so we have to inject traffic because there's no clients connected. Clients are connected, they would be generating traffic. Since no clients are connected, we got to create our own authentication package to generate a bunch of those IVs to get enough to crack the key. And that's why I tell everybody, yeah, I mean, WEP is broken, no doubt, but don't leave nothing. And put WEP on it instead of nothing. Nothing is nothing. And then we don't have to do anything. We sit here, we'd intercept everything they're doing. And if we decide, they're going to PayPal or they're going to eBay, well, we just spoof their access point using this nice little tool right here. And then they connect to us and they're not going to eBay, they go through us. We get their username, the password, we get everything. So what happens is when you type in that site, you don't know it, but you're going through us. When you're going through us, we're actually intercepting the traffic. That's what a hacker does. All right. So what'll happen is if you go to a site like PayPal that uses that HTTPS you've seen before and stuff like that, it'll pop up and say, hey, we can't validate this site. You've seen that before? And what's it ask you? I understand the risks and confirm security exception. If you're
That's what happened on our Facebook Live, remember?
Well, you've just accepted the man in the middle of
the
that.
Facebook page.
That was your only protection telling you, hey, I can't validate this site. So if we took this antenna right now, and we spoofed the access point, say Starbucks or Arby's or wherever, whenever anybody connected to us, if they were going to HTTPS, it would always say, hey, I can't trust this site. But if you tell it to trust that site, that's what we call user circumvented security. User circumvented security is always the worst security to have because the user can say yes, 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 and then you've just been attacked. Your option is view the certificate. One thing is to view the certificate, to read and say, okay, what's saying on the certificate? Because when I do assessments, I got on the certificate and it says, hey, we're doing a test. Good job. You viewed the certificate. Okay. But if you know it's a valid and legitimate site, you have a decision to make. Do you want to put your credit card information in there? You can't guarantee it. A lot of times it's because you don't have what's called the root certificate. You don't have that root certificate downloaded into your browser. That's why you don't trust that site. But you never know that for sure. So you've always got that area of risk. So the safest way, pick up the phone and call. That's the safest way.
we cracked the key. You can see right now, well, you can see the key that's been cracked, though. You won't know, obviously, what the exact access point is because we've got to redact some stuff, though. But there you can see within a few minutes, we have cracked the key. It says key found and decrypted correctly 100%.
Did the GUI do it or did the command?
No, I used the GUI to do some of the actual, the stuff I couldn't remember, like the air replay, cafe latte and chip chop and so on, because, you know, you're getting old, I'm getting old, man, and I can't remember all these freaking command lines, but...
Next time we go war driving, we'll make sure we bring our scripts.
Yeah, you know, it's just been a while since I've had to go and, you know, sit behind somebody driving, and but the point is, there was no clients connected to that network,
It makes it more difficult.
which, although it was more difficult, it still pretty much gave us the ability to crack this with a few more extra minutes. So,
all right, so basically he did what we did in class last semester with a screenshot here that I used on the Mac using AirSniff. And it took a minute, 37 seconds on an 8-character web key inside the classroom here. And then he also talked about the unsecured certificate that we got during the man-in-the-middle attack, and how most people do user circumvented security, meaning they bypass the security by just clicking OK, like you guys had to do in the lab if you were using like Firefox, I believe. IE actually, I believe, was the one who let us through easier or surprised me. I think Firefox actually popped up the certificate. I believe Chrome did as well, but IE was actually easier to circumvent the security, which surprised me in that lab. But anyway, what he's talking about is when you do the man-in-the-middle attack on a war drive, all the traffic's going through the hackers, like he said, in the vehicle outside the business, and unbeknownst to users. These guys get paid, by the way. Businesses pay them to test their workers to see that they are indeed following protocol when it comes to security. And they generally went through some type of training a month or two prior on, hey, here's some security things that, and these guys don't host the training. As you can tell, you probably wouldn't want them host the training. But these guys do the hacking stuff, and then they give a report back to the business on this is how you did. This is what we got into. This is what we couldn't get into. Oh, and by the way, 20 people on this side of the building used their credit card, and here's their credit card information that they used. That's the type of reports you get back. And anyway, that was the video I showed last semester during the war drive. But then also there is on this page, we went over, should be a map here of the results. Here it is, war driving results. So we did the wet password crack, and then also which took a minute 37 seconds. And then, and by the way, we'll be doing this again the first Saturday in April in this room at 9 a.m. I haven't announced it yet, but I'm announcing it to you guys first. And I've been talking about all semester what good time to do. So what they did was they came in at 9 a.m. on March 2nd, around March 2nd there. It was actually March 1st, Saturday, March 1st last year. And we had about 8 people, some RBC students, community members, both. Community members came to this as well. 2 or 3 community members came. And we gave them a 5-mile radius from RBC, told them to go out and drive around wherever they want to in this certain quadrant that they were given. And about 20% were open or web access points. They did have a lot of fun, especially those that never done it before, because the tools that we use are totally free to use. Come back to RBC, put together all the data using the website I showed at the first of class, WiggleNet, where it uploads like we're looking at right now. This is recent data, by the way, of local access points around RBC, whether they're open or closed or unsecure or secure. This has been out for about 8 years, by the way, this website. And it does have a Droid app, which you've got a Droid app, the WiggleNet Droid app I turned you on to a couple weeks ago, and he's been playing with it a little bit. And that's the app we'll be using. Those that are Droid users in here will be using in April, on the first Saturday in April. But here's the results here on WPA. There was 33,245 access points scanned. WPA was 26,831. Web or open was 6,414, roughly 20%, 19.29% exactly, were open or web keys that didn't have to do any hacking at all. They were totally open. And so that's surprising to some people, especially those who did the war drive, especially when they war drive around areas they live at, when they found out 50% saturation was open around their neighborhood. That was kind of scary. And some of them even found their house that they drove by was open, so that was kind of fun because we actually typed in their address after the war drive to see exactly if theirs was found as well and what security they had. And I didn't let them, I let you guys know that, but I didn't let them know before they went on the war drive I was going to do that. And so they kind of saw what their security was real time, and got to go home and take some information and secure their access point immediately. And so that was kind of eye-opening to them. But anyway, I wanted to show you this tonight because we're talking about Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi security. And some of the terminologies we'll talk about tonight in the chapter is war driving is one of them. That's in Vegas every year they have a war driving event where they basically saturate the city of Vegas using the antennas like you saw in the video with laptops, and usually mainly Linux and Android devices work better on war driving. And at the end of the session, they come back, gather the data, and give it to all the business folks in the city of Los Angeles or Las Vegas, Chamber of Commerce, and they get a report and create it and say, here's what your health is of the city as far as access points. And so over the years, the iteration's been better and better as far as the security level of those businesses. But it is a fun process. So if you can come to it, it's going to be the first Saturday in April. I'll email on Facebook and Twitter here over break. And talking about break, I want to mention before we get into the chapter discussion on chapter 8, this Thursday we're going to be doing. You're going to come in. I'm going to talk about the lab you're going to be taking home, which is actually going to be on risk identification. And risk identification basically is looking at. We're going to look specifically at the RBC account password policies. I actually saw Lou yesterday and was talking to him about it, and he remembers that lab and looks forward to getting data back from us on this lab from you guys. And so basically we inventory the assets, we determine the threat agents against it, determine whether vulnerabilities exist, and then what we're going to do about it, what you want to do about it. And because you're assessing the current infrastructure of RVC account passwords and usernames. How easily are they found? The only one link I give you is this one link in the scenario, which is on RVC's website, on my RVC, and that's it. And the question is, when a person registers at RVC, they're given an account for RVC Eagle and communication and online services. The questions you'll ask yourself for this assignment is the RVC account password policy secure? How can this be account password policy be exploited? Do students know how to change their password? Do students know what a secure password is? And so there's some questions you're going to have to ask around the campus and around other classes. Like, hey, do you know how to change a password? Or, what's a secure password? Something like that. You start a discussion and, just a real quick survey. So you'll tackle those steps. You'll go through them on your own, create a one-page synopsis of your thoughts and turn them in. That's going to be your lab for this week. Next week is spring break. The following week is week 9. We will be meeting in week 9, but then that Thursday after coming back is devoted to beginning your research paper and presentation, which I know by the looks on your face, you've already got it done, so you probably don't even need it, right? You've already started it. No. And so that night's devoted for you to start it, at least start your research, at least make an outline, at least get that done, right? And, I'm no different than you when I was in college. I waited till the last minute to do my papers. And yeah, exactly, right. I get it too if you need to. But English classes was my hard one. Literature. I actually did like one literature class I took, surprisingly. But anyway, an English teacher, what I tell you all the time, when you do a research paper, what's the first thing they always ask you to turn in? Every time, outline, right? And the kids always like, oh man, I don't even know how to stick an outline. I can write this thing in my sleep, I don't need no outline to, write a paper. Well, after about the 4th year of college, after beating my head against the wall for 3 years of doing research papers that way and begrudgingly turning in an outline, I started doing outlines and realized, guess what? They knew what they were talking about. It actually did help. And it's kind of like a blueprint for a house before you start building a house. And you've been in construction before. No, if you don't have a blueprint, you just start getting some 2x4s and nails and levels and buckets and whatever. You might get some stuff built in a day or two, but it might be like, Jed Clampett or something, or out in the backwoods. Not going to really be, too level maybe. So you need a blueprint, you need something. That's what the outline is, a blueprint. And so I do have you watch in week 9 a little tutorial I put together to help you. I'll go there real quick. To help you with your research paper. And so there's a little podcast to watch, PowerPoint example. The PowerPoint example on week 9 lab is just a template basically to start with. It's on WLAN home security, and it's just a real quick template. You can use it or don't use it, it's whatever you want to do. Because when you create your presentation, most students choose to use like a PowerPoint or an open office or something like that. And since you get Office free now as a student, probably beneficial to use the Office PowerPoint, I'm guessing. But a little podcast you'll watch, and then you'll answer a question after 2 Thursdays from this 2 weeks from this Thursday. What did you accomplish for research paper presentation? And you might just put down, created my outline. That's good enough for me. That's a big step right there. And that'll help you a lot in your research paper endeavors. Now I'm going to throw this out there again, and being week 8, about halfway through, if you want to give your presentation in a video format at home using like a Skype or a Google Hangout or FaceTime, whatever it is you want to do, you can do that as well. I had one student take me up on that last semester. I've offered it every semester for the last 2 years now, and I've had one student take me up on it. So, he did it in his basement, on his couch, had his table set up with a Wi-Fi access point, a couple phones, and did it on mobile security. Had a Droid phone, and I let him borrow one of my iPhones, and he went through both of them and looked at the plus and minus of security on mobile devices. And it was pretty good presentation, and used Skype, and it worked fine. And so if you want to do that, let me know before you leave, and we'll do a little test run between now and the end of the semester and let you know how to use it. We'll test it out, that way you can kind of play with it at home on that connection. Because in IT, those of you that are in IT or you going into IT, especially those that are in IT already, video conferencing is like, second nature. You're doing it all the time. You're literally doing it all the time. I say on a weekly basis, I video conference with about 4 or 5 people on a weekly basis. And some live here in Rockford, but some live in the East Coast, West Coast, New York, Vegas, wherever. Totally free. Doesn't cost anything, And one of the ways to get people's input, but believe me, this works, is to do video conference. They love it. People love in big companies to be on video conferences and to give you and people around you their expertise. And so the last one I did was Steve Wilson from Apple. I asked him to give a spill of iTunes. He's the one that created the concept of iTunes years ago. And I thought, he's probably not going to want to do it. He's a pretty busy guy. And I've met him a little bit over the years working with college with Apple. And he said, sure. He did a 45-minute presentation using Skype, working in his office in Cupertino, California. And so there's a group of about 12 faculty. So, he was excited about it. And so you can get people to actually, they wouldn't fly to Rockford, but they would use Skype or FaceTime or whatever other video. Even Google now or Firefox now has a cool plug-in. You might have seen it called Hello that you can actually, you don't even have to have an account. Go to Firefox, just fire up Firefox on a new version. And right there on the home page is Home, where you can click on, or Hello, and you can click on and create a link and give it to anybody, and they can message with you immediately, video conferencing. I don't know. I know that's going to be used in other ways, probably interesting ways, especially since you don't have to authenticate. But anyway, there's tons of options for video. So if you're interested in that, that's an option. But we are going to meet 2 weeks from tonight for discussion. And then I'll give you a little, hip, hip, hooray kind of cheer for you to help you with your outline that night. And then that Thursday, 2 weeks from this Thursday, you're going to use that night to do your research paper presentation, or start on it at least, start your outline. Make sense? So that way you can at least have your outline created. This week, we're going to be covering, tonight, we're going to be covering Wi-Fi security. We're going to first go into the components of Wi-Fi, which some of you might be familiar with. Some of the terminology you've heard of before, for sure. Some of you may not have heard of. And then we're going over Chapter 8 and review questions for Chapter 8 and quiz as always. So let me go ahead and bring up that presentation. So anybody going anywhere special for break, or just not school? Is that it? There's no school, right? That's good enough, right? You didn't know spring break was next week. It's surprising. You're not the first one that's told me that. Like, really? Most semester students are like, oh yeah, man, I can't wait to spring break. Like, kind of creeped up on everybody, I think, this semester. Even faculty, it did. And so, yeah, exactly. But good news was, I did hear today, somebody told me in the office that we're supposed to get in the 40s this weekend. So that's a good thing, right? Not bad. 50s next week? Awesome. I'm ready for it.
Hey, as long as the guy was specified about 50 feet away that sent it was right on, we should be good.
All right, we're going to look at Wi-Fi today and how some attacks that are on there, one of them being war driving, we'll look at. But first of all, we're going to talk about what wireless is, wireless data, how it's revolutionized our computer networking environment over the years. You can imagine years ago, we had our networks with wired only, and then before too long, in the late 80s, early 90s, the Wi-Fi consortium sprouted, and actually began in governmental and military, and then creeped into commercial areas. But now today, Wi-Fi is everywhere. Wireless is everywhere. It's because it's everywhere. It's a target for attackers, as you can see from the video tonight. Early wireless network standards had vulnerabilities. WEP connection, WEP vulnerability, and WEP is still probably, like I said earlier, last report I read, over 60% of home users, 70% of home users actually have WEP connection only on their access points. And one of the reasons for that, we'll talk about why that is, I think. And then businesses also the same, still have a heavy WEP saturation. You'd think they'd be on the highest WPA, WPA2 security. That's not the case. And we'll talk about, there are some logical reasons for that, by the way. And we'll talk about what those are in just a second. So some other attacks, there are some, if those of you have Droids, they do have some apps on the Droid market that you can play with called Snarfing that we'll talk about tonight with Bluetooth. And Bluetooth Snarfing basically is where you can fire up an app on a Droid device, and like most users, they have their Bluetooth on for whatever reason. They never use it anymore, never maybe have used it. Well, with Bluetooth Snarfing, you can actually get files from a phone. You can send files to a phone. You know, list goes on and on of things you can do with Bluetooth Snarfing. But basically, Bluetooth in and of itself is just a wireless technology. It uses short range frequency, around 30 feet on average. It can be longer, but it's about average. It does have a rapid ad hoc pairing. Most of the pairings today are 6 zeros or 4 zeros, and that's it. On most companies, it's not real, difficult to figure out the pairing. And then they create a network called a PAN, a personal area network, that you can create a Bluetooth network within a computer environment. I've seen Bluetooth networks in computer environments, by the way, by having Bluetooth USB dongles and creating Bluetooth PANs. Two types of Bluetooth topologies are PicoNet and ScatterNet. Here's some examples of Bluetooth. Automobile, hands-free cell, which everybody should be doing in Illinois, right? But everybody's not. How many times you drive behind somebody's like, they don't even hide it, right? Or, yeah, so anyway, they're right there in front of their face, right by a cop or something. I don't care. It just irritates me. I don't know, people, does it irritate you or just me? Or are you just used to it? It's like, who cares? Who cares? No biggie. But, it's against the law, last I heard, right, in Illinois? So, okay. I've never seen anybody pulled over, though.
It's just for like this.
Do I know?
Is it just like this?
No, you can't have it in your hand. So here's the hand. It's a hands-free. Like, it has to be out of your hand. Yeah, exactly. But they'll be right here, I think you're right, though. People do think if they're talking like this, it's hands-free. I think you're right, because I don't know how many people I see holding it like this. I think it's hands-free.
Every now and then, if the Bluetooth doesn't work, I'll go ahead and put it in my pocket, in my breast pocket, and leave it on speakerphone.
Well, it's hands-free.
I do that all the time, walk around the house.
That's hands-free. Yeah, but still it's hands-free. You're okay. But automobile Bluetooth, right? Home entertainment Bluetooth, stereo speaker, headphones, photographs. There's a lot of cameras out today. In fact, you can buy an SD card that's Bluetooth enabled to dump your pictures onto Wi-Fi network. Computer accessories, keyboard, mouse, gaming accessories, all Bluetooth. Sports and fitness, all Bluetooth. Medical and health Bluetooth, tons of stuff in Bluetooth. But PicoNet's one of the types of networks, topologies. It establishes when two devices come together in reach of each other. They connect. One's a master, one's a slave. The master controls all the network traffic, and the slave takes the commands of that. An example would be if you had an iPhone or a Droid and you were connected to a boombox at Bluetooth and you had control over it with that device. Okay, you would be the master, that would be the slave, and tell what song to go to, turn up the volume, stop it, whatever. Go to a different station. Here's an example of the master slave. You got one master, multiple slaves. You can have active slaves and parked slaves. Parked slave means they're just ready for use, but they're parked, not being in use right now. ScatterNet is a group of PicoNets with connections between them, between the different PicoNets. And then here's what I talked about earlier, bluejacking, or it's called BlueSnarfing as well. Bluejacking, this is an attack that sends unsolicited messages to a Bluetooth device. Text messages, images, sounds can be sent, considered annoying. Yeah, it is annoying. I've seen it happen. It's kind of funny, though, too. Yeah, BlueSnarfing is actually pretty fun. If you ever get a chance to do it with your family, definitely do it with your family. Don't say, Professor Conkle said I can do this with anybody. It's like awesome. It is pretty awesome, but don't do it. Just do it with your family. Yeah, annoy your coworkers and family and friends. That would be awesome to do that. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. And it is definitely more annoying and harmful. But you send a weird noise to it, a picture maybe in a meeting, a video possibly. Just a couple thoughts. And then, but bluejacking is very popular amongst business folks to annoy each other. And then here's an example of the scattered net, just two PicoNets together, connected with an active connection, an active slave connected to two PicoNet environments. BlueSnarfing, unauthorized access, one I mentioned earlier. This one you can actually, it's often between cell phones and laptops. Attacker can copy emails, contacts, data without the owner's knowledge. Just walking by them in a cafe or in the same elevator can do this. If the person,
You can send the data to the device, you just can't retrieve it.
right, with the first one you can, right. This one you can actually retrieve data with BlueSnarfing. BlueSnarfing, you can get into the root of the computer, they call it rooting of the Android device. And you might have heard of that, possibly. If you root an Android device, you can pretty much do anything with that device. And this basically attacks initially those that are rooted, which is surprisingly how many Droid devices are rooted. And the reason they are rooted is in order for people to do stuff they want to do, just normal stuff sometimes, they have to root them to do what it is they want it to do, right? But it opens themselves up for other things. Now, even unrooted Droid devices are susceptible to some of these attacks, but they're only susceptible to these attacks if the following is happening on their phone at the time. If Bluetooth's turned on and email's open. If email's closed, they're not susceptible. If Bluetooth's on and a file is open, then they're susceptible to this attack. And again, the user doesn't get a prompt, and pictures can be gathered, files can be gathered with the right BlueSnarfing app. I'm not going to tell you what those BlueSnarfing apps are, but they are out there for Droid users in here. You can find them fairly easy. Just do a simple Google search. You can find them. Then IEEE is a network people organization that began in 1884, actually, and they began working with network standards in the 80s, and they released in 97 IEEE 802.11. That was the very first wireless standard and came out initially with 802.11a, but actually B actually came out, that's what people heard of first, but technically A was the first one that came out. And so it actually began higher speeds added in 802.11b, and that's when everybody kind of started using it. A was just really slow. It was useful in certain markets and military and governmental and banking and law enforcement, but not anywhere else really. And it was really expensive when it first came out. The average router, Wi-Fi router, when they first came out in the early 90s, or late 90s, was in the thousands of dollars for a Wi-Fi router that you buy for $40 now, and about a tenth of the strength of the one you have now. And so nobody could afford them. Okay, nobody could. Most folks could not afford them. Definitely, many businesses couldn't afford them. But here's a life cycle kind of 802.11. A did have a maximum rate of speed of 54 megabits per second at a 5 megahertz or gigahertz spectrum. G was very widely accepted, and it started out with doing backward compatibility with B and A. N, what we currently have, and then Super N, and then we have other N's that are coming about, or different variations of N. Definitely has better speed, better coverage, interference susceptibility, higher security with WPA, WPA2, personal and enterprise. And then wireless client network card. The wireless client NIC card basically performs the same functions as your wired NIC card, but it sends out wireless signals that you don't see. And those wireless signals, though, can easily be intercepted, as you saw with the video. They vary, they vary in range. And when hackers drive down and do a ward drive, they're at least 50 yards, 30 to 50 yards from houses at least. and they've been able to pick up signal strength fairly strong from a house in a residential area, or even if you go down 90. When you get some of these apps and go down 90, you'd be surprised how much you pick up on 90, going 65, 70 miles an hour from here to Chicago. And by the way, it's kind of cool to use these apps to, when you get them on your phone, to see what it does on these apps is it creates a pin everywhere you go. And at the end of your journey, you plug it in your computer, or you just look at it on the phone, and it shows you every location of Wi-Fi's that were captured along your route as you were driving. So access points, you guys are familiar with these from home use and work use. As antenna and radio transmitter receiver, sending and receiving data, bridging software for other devices, connects to wireless network. Generally, most of these access points do have 4 ports on them for wired access as well. And then AP functions are basically where it acts as a base station for wireless networks. You do have access point generators or repeaters you might have heard of. And repeaters, all they do is basically repeat your signal. So if you have an access point here in your business, you can have a whole bunch of repeaters throughout your business. And what these repeaters do is just repeat the signal and send them further out than the access point will allow. So it just repeats that signal and generates that signal. About the same cost your repeaters are. Here's an example of a wired network connected to a wireless network. We have this at Rock Valley, have this at your house, I'm guessing. If you have a gaming system, you should hopefully have your gaming system connected to the wired port, and otherwise you will get pretty good lag on your gaming time. You get very high pings and probably get killed before you know it as soon as you enter in which I know nobody in here plays first-person shooters, right? No, Joe does, but that's the only one. So when I taught high school, man, they always used to work on me for the whole semester to have a Saturday LAN party. Anybody remember LAN parties? LAN parties? LAN party is everybody brought a switch or a router and a computer, usually a laptop, sometimes computers what they bring, to a building or a house. And then we would set up a LAN, a local LAN, and then one person in the environment would connect that LAN. A lot of times the LAN was totally without the internet. It's just a LAN with a host on say Counter-Strike might be one of them, was real popular back then. The other one was, it's a Microsoft game. Microsoft, what is it?
Age of Empires.
Age of Empires, thank you. AOE. AOE was a popular one. But anyway, you didn't have to have internet for some of these games because, and it was much faster too because you're playing within 20 people within a room. You're working on your local LAN. So, it was super fast, super quick. Now, you could host, find hosts online, which back then were very slow and few and far between. You could find a good one. So that's why LAN parties actually sprouted, was because you could have very high, high gaming within a LAN and high speeds within a LAN, and you didn't need the internet for it. But you had to learn. It was kind of cool because high schoolers were learning back when I taught ninth grade. They were learning subnetting back in ninth grade just to set up separate LANs for their gaming. And so it's kind of cool for them to learn that. And they'd go out and buy old switches, old Cisco switches that school would get rid of. They'd buy them for $5, $10, and then learn how to configure them. And so it's kind of cool. But they'd have to what I did was I said, okay, I taught C++ where they had to create in Counter-Strike, you could actually create maps for Counter-Strike. And I just said, okay, you have to create 3 maps that work and they function. Everybody in class has to, not just 99%. Everybody has created 3 maps in a 3-month period. If you do 3 maps in a 3-month period, I'll buy pizza and you guys we'll do a LAN party. And every semester they met and exceeded that result. And so, but they learned some stuff anyway. But that was before the advent of access points back then. But when access points came around and became really popular is whenever you had high-speed broadband. Back then it was before Comcast. Who was it, people? Somebody help me. No, before whoever bought out Comcast. Whoever Comcast bought out. What was it? Yeah, Insight. Thank you. Insight was the very first broadband that I had in Rockford. I don't know if you guys might have others. I don't know, but that's the one I'm remembering. It was Insight, and I mean, it was awesome. The first broadband connection was just. I mean, I probably stayed there for like 3 days, just seeing what I could download. It was like download everything. I downloaded like 5 ISOs from Microsoft's website, and just downloading stuff, burning DVDs. Because when you first experienced it, you didn't know it, but all you knew was dial-up prior to that, as far as from home use, and so it was pretty awesome. But when Wi-Fi came out and access points came out, even with WEP, again connected to your wired network, was very slow because WEP was very slow, and the access points were very slow when they first came out. But it was wireless, and so it just kind of creeped up from there. But here's an example of access points being connected to laptops, mobile devices today. Today, the picture would probably be, and this isn't that old of a slide, instead of laptops, more likely, realistically, be tablets and mobile devices more likely connected. I mean, most home users don't fire up their laptops unless they're needing to type a paper or something like that. Otherwise, they're on their phone or on their tablet, right, doing whatever. But even with their tablets today, they can type paper. So here's some access point functions that acts as a bridge between wireless and wired. It can connect to wired network by cable, generally does. And there's some autonomous natures of access point, meaning it can be separate from other network devices and access points. It can have necessary intelligence for wireless authentication, encryption, and management. Wireless broadband routers, and all of them create them. Probably around here, Motorola is going to be the most popular, I'm guessing, still. And it's a single hardware device containing an access point, a firewall, a router, and a DHCP server. For out of the box, plug it in, set it up, and you're ready to go in 5-10 minutes. Wireless networks have been vulnerable for from attackers, and it's not restricted to just a cable as well. Types of wireless LAN attacks: discovery of the network, attacks from RF spectrum, and attacks involving access points itself. Most, well, not most, because it's changed now, but whenever access points first came out, they had default username and password. They still do, but most users, well, most of the internal software was such when you set up these access points, it didn't prompt you to change the administrator password initially. It would let you have whatever the default was. Admin is an example, right? And 192.168.1.1 was the default for Linksys for years, and admin was the username password. Well, now today, if you go out and buy an access point, what happens when you first plug it in to set up? Anybody know who's bought one recently? What's it prompt you to do? Anybody set one up in the last year or two? Bought one out and bought a Linksys router or whatever? You know what it says? No? It forces you to change your password. You all right?
No, sorry, I just did one this weekend.
Yeah.
What do you,
Did it force you to change it as soon as you set it up? It didn't.
actually,
What brand did you buy?
I got a Linksys one.
Okay.
Actually, I had to take it back.
Oh,
It
really?
was like the first time I've used Linksys router.
Yeah.
Forever. This weekend I got one and I could not
Couldn't get to work, huh?
at
It's a
all.
lemon.
I had to take it back and I got it that year. However, that year ones now have like randomly generated. They
Okay.
generate you what a username and password right out like for your network.
Right, good.
And
So they do that right out of the box.
it's doing PHP.
Cool. Yeah, good. And I'm glad they do that, because for years they didn't do that. All the providers didn't do that. You would just and so you, as a hacker, you could drive by and find an access point and just log into the root right into the administrator account by using admin, because half the users took it out of the box, plugged it in, boom. Well, we'll change the SSID, something, okay, my home or something, and then be able to access that access point in no time because they didn't change the username and password on the box. Discovering the network, what it means is one of the first step attackers do, and they talked about on the video tonight, is a scan, like Wireshark, okay? Discovering what's out there on that network, what's out there on that LAN. All these apps that do ward driving do that. They discover continually all the time what's out there, what SSIDs are out there, discover the presence of the network. Then beaconing is the next way to do it within that, where an access point sends regular intervals and announces that they're here, they're here, they're here. That's how these apps get the access point information. And then ward driving is just a process of discovering these access points and where they're located at with geolocation. So where your car is located at within proximity of that access point maps it on a pin on a road as you're driving. So here is some ward driving tools. Mobile computing device of some type. It could be a phone, a tablet that has a wireless NIC, a wireless NIC adapter. Many ward drivers need a wireless NIC external USB antenna to attach to the top of their car for just stronger attenuation of the antenna to make it a stronger reach. And then the antenna themselves can be inside the vehicle or outside the vehicle, either one. And then the software as well, mostly today is going to be the top software that hackers use and folks that do penetration testing, mostly in the Linux platform and in the Droid platform, those two. Then in the last few years, GPS has come about to where it's not required, but to pinpoint exactly where the location is, it's nice to have a GPS coordinates along with that. And so if you're doing it on a phone, it's a no-brainer because your phones have GPS, most of them built in. So it uses that for the software to pinpoint it exactly. If you don't have GPS, like you're using a laptop, it can do triangulation according to the cell towers around your area to determine the location as well. So there's a number of different ways. Here's another term for hackers is ward chalking. Basically, it's documenting and advertising a location, and that's like the WeagleNet website I showed you. That's a ward chalk. It's basically like you used to do when you were a kid, maybe when you would draw on the lines on the chalk on the sidewalk, where you were playing your game, where locations were, whatever. Same thing with websites today. They ward chalk where the SSIDs are located at. And WeagleNet, like I said, has been out for about 8 years. Here's some examples of ward chalking symbols. If it's a closed network, it's a circle. If it's a bandwidth open, it's two half circles butted up against each other. Bandwidth encrypted with a W in a circle. So we've talked over the attacks on searching. Now let's talk about attacks on RF spectrum. RF spectrum is wireless protocol analyzer, and it generates interference. The wireless protocol analyzer gets traffic because, like you said on the hack video, in order to get the faster you can crack the key determines heavily upon juxtaposition on how much data is flowing on that Wi-Fi network. So what hackers will do is when they hack into a network or connect to a network, they will flood that network with traffic. Either themselves or other hackers will on purpose begin hitting that IP address and using that IP address within their environment to generate traffic and data. Because you need at least 5,000 bits of data to even begin the cycle started. And so the more traffic, the better, and that's where this RF spectrum attack happens. The NIC card must be in what's called it doesn't say here on the slide, it should be in a native listening mode, which most NIC cards are. They're listening all the time. And unless the users change that on a Wi-Fi access point, more than likely it's going to get all the information needed. 6 modes of a wireless NIC. Master, this could be acting as access point, because with a laptop, a phone, a tablet, you can set up a ad hoc Wi-Fi network in seconds to connect other users to your device, to share internet, to share data. And I do it all the time for valid reasons, for in business meetings where I want to share a file with somebody. Well, you don't have great Wi-Fi or something maybe in that area. I can set up a real quick Wi-Fi, have them connect, or ad hoc access point on my device and have them connect to me, and I can share a file with them easily, a lot quicker than email, a lot quicker than USB even, because it's wireless. And then they can get their file immediately. Whether they have a Windows, a Linux, Droid, doesn't really matter. And all of your phones, by the way, will do this. How many's ever set up an ad hoc Wi-Fi on your phone? If you've not done it, do it, because it's definitely easy to do. And one of the things I show you how to do on that war driving event is show you how to do just that, set up an ad hoc Wi-Fi network, which if you don't know how to do and you come to the event, the first Saturday in April, I'll show you how to do it. It's not real hard to do on any device. Repeater is another mode. Mesh, and repeater is kind of like I drew up on the board. It just repeats the access point signal. Mesh is basically just casting out to other networks. Ad hoc is what I just mentioned with your phones, creating an ad hoc for one to another connection. Ad hocs generally take up to, at the most, 8 to 10 connections. They really like it to stay around 4 or 5 connections. Like if you set up an ad hoc on a Mac, it takes by default up to 10 connections and it drops the rest of them. Windows, I think it's around the same on ad hoc. But anything over 10 is generally going to be degradation of data. And then monitoring mode. Now interference also can happen where signals from other devices disrupt. Some ways things can interfere. Some devices can interfere. Microwave ovens still interferes Wi-Fi today. Elevator motors. If you live in a building that has elevators, can definitely interfere. Anything with electrical motor basically can interfere. Copy machines, outdoor lighting, theft protection devices you have in your house, Bluetooth devices you have in it. If you have a wireless sound system, I had a wireless sound system that worked on the same spectrum as my Wi-Fi access point, and it caused issues. In fact, all of your access points work on certain gigahertz, and so does your Wi-Fi or your wireless sound systems at home. And if they're on the same gigahertz channel and on the same, which is like 5 and 5 gigahertz, and on the same web, or say same channel for your Wi-Fi, like say channel 8 on both, you'll have drops in your house. And you can easily just change that by going into your Wi-Fi access point and changing your channel from whatever it's at to something else. And usually that'll stop it if it's if something in your house conflicting with like a wireless sound system, which I had for years, which I don't have anymore. And I used to have problems with my Wi-Fi access point. Here's an example of an attacker flooding an access point with data to halt all communication to all the devices. This can happen on a wired network as well. And a wired network is called a ping of death. Same deal on access point. You're just flooding the network constantly until it overfloods and can't connect to anything else, because it doesn't know what to do with that data. You're saying it doesn't know to stop it unless you set up rules to do that on the access point, which, by the way, there are rules set up on an access point to stop RF spectrum flooding, and also rules that you can set up to stop ping of death type of events where people are constantly pinging an access point. So attacks using an access point, rogue access, evil twins. Evil twins is basically where you go to Starbucks and a hacker sets up, say Starbucks is, I don't know, Starbucks is the SSID, right? Attacker comes in, they create theirs Starbucks. Anybody can create whatever they want to for SSID, right? The users in the building come in, they know it's Starbucks because it's already set in their Wi-Fi if they've been there before. Well, the way it works in Wi-Fi is the strongest signal closest to you with that SSID will win, all right? It will win all the time. So if it connects to the hacker that's closer in signal than the access point in the building, let's even say it's unsecure totally. The users 9 times out of 10 is going to connect to the unsecure network. And once they connect to it and start getting internet traffic and start going on the websites, the more data they create, the better, because they can use a program like Cain and Abel to do man in the middle. So everything they're doing, like I said in the video, is going through that hacker, and all the traffic's going through that hacker. It doesn't take long to get data, stop the attack, and walk out of the building. And that happens every day. Evil twins. Rogue access point. This happens in businesses a lot. Okay? Probably here in Rock Valley too, right? And here's what happens. People are tired of the stinky internet access in your business, whether it be in a Fortune 500 business, a mom and pop business, doesn't matter. So they go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm buying me an access point at Best Buy this weekend. I'm plugging it into my port on my computer next to me because I saw a YouTube video, and I'm doing it. and I'm getting my own access point, and I'm getting my own Wi-Fi, and I don't care what IT thinks. Do people think that? Oh yeah, happens all the time. And so what happens is they set up on a Monday morning. They even maybe watch a video that showed them how to hide their SSID. They're really smart. So they hid the SSID, and now they're connected to this hidden SSID in a rogue access point, and they don't know it, but some hacker finds out about it and now connects to that rogue access point after hours and begins to go into the network and begins to maybe they blab about it at the bar or something or whatever. Who knows what happens? Stuff happens. And so anyway, somebody gets to the secure network now through this rogue access point. That's a dangerous part of rogue access points. But you can find tools totally free on all devices. Droid and iOS both have scanning tools that will scan SSIDs even if they're hidden and find them and show you what they are. It's a simple walk around a building to determine if there's rogue access points in your area, right? And you can find them easily. And that causes a lot of issues today in businesses today. You imagine this being in a bank. You think there's rogue access points in banks? Oh yeah. Could be a CEO set one up. I don't know. You might have got tired of the access being so slow. Or maybe websites being blocked. And he wanted to, to circumvent it through a public Wi-Fi access point. And he's connected in this building. Rogue access points, unauthorized access point allows attackers to bypass configurations in a network. It may be set up behind a firewall or not, doesn't really matter, because if it's set up behind a firewall, it's better for the hacker because they're right into the network without any hacking whatsoever with a rogue access point. Because with no passwords, they get right into the network and begin doing their deed. Now, there are devices that you can buy online that hackers buy that they'll put these rogue access points in locations like closets, foyers of public buildings, behind plants that have an Ethernet port open, plug it in to power, and it could just sit there, and the hacker leaves, and now they have total untethered access to that business. They can remote into that access point and be able to do whatever. And so that's why it's important, and I mentioned this already in here, but I'll mention it again because it's very important. You need to block your Ethernet ports, block your access ports throughout your building. It's very cheap to do, and better yet, turn them off on the switch as well to where it can't be accessed. And if you need to be accessed for a conference or need to be accessed for a meeting, it's as simple as turning on the switch, unplugging the port lock, and you're good to go. We have them all over campus here. We have port locks all over campus. And Tavis can unlock one in seconds, turn on the switch in seconds if need be, and you're back in business. And so access points, rogue access points are generally in businesses found through open ports in a building. So close them up. Here's an example of a rogue access point. The hacker comes in from the south side. Oh, I see a rogue access point in this office. Yeah, let's see if I can connect to it. Oh, I'm in. There you go. Don't have to do anything else. Now I can get into all the programs, all the files, all the directories, to this person's rogue access point. So what can IT do? Block ports that aren't needed. Number two, IT can walk and do scans. We can do scans around our building. We can do scans around our network. The place I work, we do rogue access point scans. Hey, have a good night. Rogue access point scans around the first part of every month, and we do it after hours. And we find usually one or two a month, or one or two a year, not a month, but one or two a year. And it's generally with new employees who didn't know any better, and it was innocent. Usually, it really was. But then there's some who wasn't so innocent. But every once in a while, you'll get those, but not too often. And, just an educational thing that people have to learn. But it doesn't take much to walk around and find that information. Okay, I'm going to end on this one, on Evil Twin. Evil Twin, I mentioned, the mimicking of access point, how attackers can mimic an access point. You and I both, with a phone, can create a rogue access point with your phone, even though it's ad hoc. And most users aren't smart enough to know that's an ad hoc connection. They just know they get internet. You name it SSID, internet free, hey, I'm in. Or free internet, right? Or AT&T free. And people go, oh yeah, I'm in. I actually did this. I'll end with a story. It actually was a story that when I was tweaking the lab we did on the man in the middle. I was in a St. Louis Drury hotel, and I asked the manager, hey, I'm finishing up this lab, and I need a real network to test it on. Do you mind? It was like Saturday morning. Do you mind if I try it on this? He goes, yeah, sure, why not? He had taken some networking and was kind of interested in it. And so we set up a rogue access point in the lobby there and put up there free AT&T, I think it was, AT&T free or something like that. Because I think he did have a competing SSID in a building called AT&T that was open for anybody to use that AT&T brought in. We call ours AT&T free because his, you had to at least click an agree button or something for, the accepted use policy or whatever. I didn't have any of that. You just said free and people got connected and they got internet. So we sat there for like 3 or 4 hours, and there's 99% of the people connected to the free one. And we got all this traffic, man. We got websites, we got passwords, we got usernames. Now, granted, I deleted all of them, but he was totally amazed about all the stuff coming through in this lobby. And these guys coming through this lobby aren't, kids. These are road warrior people. Some of these, they are on the road all the time. You can tell they work on the road with their laptops all the time, and they're the worst. They're the worst ones. They're the ones connect to that first. I don't care, man. Just connect. Just click on it. Just connect. Just start shooting. Just going to town, man. It's like, are you serious? And so that opened his eyes because I had already done that here in Rockford as a business, and it was cool to be able to do it outside of Rockford. And I thank them for letting me do it. And I even shared a video later of a class that did that lab because he was kind of helped me finish that up. And so, but yeah, it was amazing how many people the evil twin thing is done all the time through hackers. And it doesn't have to be in the building. In hotels is a popular way to do it, in lobbies, because you'll see in hotels, anytime you go to a hotel, you'll usually see an access point available around the hotel lobby that says free in the access point name, in the SSID name. Generally, those are around the area. Some of those are going to be these evil twin access points to see if people will connect to it to do a man-in-the-middle attack. It could be a building across the street, an apartment across the street, whatever, to find out if people will connect to it. Once they connect to it, all their traffic's going through this attacker, going through this man-in-the-middle machine. So, lesson: secure your access point with a secure SSID or a secure name SSID and secure protocol. WPA2. I told you I mentioned about why people have WEP, and I'll end with this. The reason people have WEP in businesses and homes is because some of your devices will not work with WPA and WPA2. What I mean by that is if you have an older laptop or older tablet or whatever in your place of business, and let's say even if it's 5 people or 10 people that have these devices that will not work on WPA and you need them to work on